is bam.
Oh my goodness.
Ow.
Hi.
It happened.
It did. Little hiccup. Here I am.
Technology has, just a wondrous hold on us and can sometimes hold us back, but also enable amazing conversations like we're having right now.
Absolutely.
Where I am in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and you're in, I'm assuming, Phoenix, Arizona, correct?
I am, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've been telling people about the amazing benefits of your products for years. I've been using your products for 8 years now. I don't know if that's how long you've been in
So,
business, but maybe I'm one of the OGs.
yeah, probably one of the OGs, yes.
Yeah, I really love your product. I've actually run a
Thank
couple
you.
of sub 18 3 mile personal fitness tests in the Marine Corps utilizing your original insoles. So
Ah, love
I can
it.
attest to
Love
their
it.
I can attest to their usefulness.
Go.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank
Well,
you for supporting Naboso and all that we do.
yeah, I love Naboso, and I just want to introduce people that follow me at Nature Athletics to kind of get introduced to you, especially because your products are so useful with our cleats, right? I love utilizing my cleats and your textured socks because it really up levels the ability of the body to like learn how to utilize the lateral arch, the medial arch pattern that I encourage so many people to go and utilize. So if you could just talk a little bit about like why'd you found Naboso,
Yeah.
and what happened there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I founded Naboso, so 2017. So I guess that would be 7, 8 years. And my goal when I first launched Naboso was to find a way to get even more activation, awareness, utilization of the foot after someone took off their shoes. And this was kind of after several years of being very involved in the minimal shoe space, the barefoot running boom, and just kind of all of that I was traveling the world teaching people to take their shoes off and let's train the foot barefoot. And then I started to get into, and people were asking me, they're like, well, if I take my shoes off, what surface should I stand on? Should I stand on like turf, a wrestling mat? Like, what does it, yeah. So then I started asking questions as far as like surface science, the
Yep.
nerves of the feet. And then, long story short, that's what led to Naboso.
Yeah. I'm standing on your standing mat right now. It's a Naboso textured standing mat that I'm doing a deep squat on a slant board. And I can attest right now that like it's really firing up everything that I have going on in order to know how I'm putting my pressure into the ground, because it's not just about like how we are utilizing our foot's muscles, but also how are we kind of like resting and taking in that pressure and accepting
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And so to me, the most important thing is this awareness. I'm very into sensory awareness or connection to self, not just the feet, but the entire body. And most people are very sensorially disconnected from their physical body and space. They don't know where their center of mass is. They don't really know where their limbs are moving. And they don't really connect to where each pressure under their foot and how it's articulating and relating to the ground. So Naboso is a way, one of the various ways that you can turn the volume up, or if you think of it like a dimmer switch, we're making it brighter so that you can kind of really see it, hear it, feel it, to then translate into more accurate connected movement.
Yeah, so that's a really good segue into how much does the foot and the sensors of the foot contribute to the overall stability of your body? And why does nobody really think about that? Why do they actually try to go contrary to that and take it out?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. Uh, so yes, it plays a role in everything. And I literally just got off a lecture that I was giving to the NHL about feet and movement, right? And I was like, I get you're in like a stiff skate, kind of like a ski boot, but that does not mean that your foot is disconnected from the story here. So just every action of your foot is going to influence the timing of the stabilization that goes up the chain. And really where we want to stabilize from a power perspective, an athletic perspective is like your hips, your glutes, right? Like the powerhouse of the lower extremity and our center of mass is
Yeah.
very directly connected to your foot. So the faster that you can feel the ground, the faster you are going to stabilize your center of mass. And it's kind of this feed forward or this anticipatory response. And this is the work of Dr. Ben Onig. This is not my work, this part that I'm talking about, but he's very into anticipatory stabilization or pre-activation
Okay.
sequencing. Which if you look at a lot of elite athletic performance, there is a pre-activation, which means you are anticipating the load before the load hits your system. That's essentially anticipatory. That's the way that has to be the way that your system stabilizes, to not get hurt, but to truly utilize the energy that is coming in. A lot of people actually are just wasting the energy that is coming into them from the ground. We have this disconnected or less than efficient relationship with the ground. And that's part of what I'm trying to kind of advocate and promote here.
Yeah, Kelly Starrett calls that hunting for tension. So he's
Okay.
always talking about that, and he calls it like when the body doesn't have like a stable foundation and a place to actually like drive the force through, the body's kind of like hunting for tension and doesn't utilize that force efficiently. And I
Right.
can talk about skiing, which is just like ice skating because I got skis tattooed on my body. I'm from Utah originally.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
High level skier, did lots of backcountry skiing, 100 day of skiing a year usually. And in order to like really set your edge and feel how you're putting pressure into the snow and getting good positive forward pressure on your skis as you're going downhill and attacking the hill, you want to be able to feel your foot. And like you cannot feel your foot at all in a ski boot. Same thing with an ice skate. I used to do a lot of pond hockey too when I was a kid. And so like being able to utilize the pressure and sense how you are actually riding that edge would really up level somebody that is doing a sport like ice skating, like hockey, or like skiing, where
Mm-hmm.
that is something that is completely missing from people's ability to be a better athlete. And the
Mm-hmm.
same thing happening in high level sports where you're talking about like pre-activation, and nobody is really thinking about how am I pre-activating my lateral arch? How am I pre-activating the
Right.
peroneal muscles and the lateral spling in order to like receive that pressure and just go and go through and
Yep.
utilize it,
Yep.
attack the ground, and be primed to explode through and go lateral to medial. And that's a huge deficiency in like our movement culture and how we're teaching people. And is that something that you see in like especially high level athletics?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that, so what I can say is that if you react to the ground, so within athletic performance, sorry, multiple thoughts in my head right now.
Go
When you
for it.
look at that athletic performance, a lot of people will actually focus on what they call reactive training, like reactive neuromuscular training, which is like, it's a valid thing. There's research around it, so I'm not discrediting it in any way. But it was always curious to me when I would hear that, and I was like, but do we want to be reacting to stimuli? We need to be anticipating the perturbation that is about to happen to the system versus reacting to it. Because when you think about the nervous system, if I'm reacting to something, by the time it happens to me, it's already too late in a sense, right? Like things are just happening so quickly. This is in the sense as far as the energy of the ground and the tension, how you had mentioned that Kelly mentions kind of hunting for tension, is by the time the impact or the energy is entering your body, if you're not already 3 phases into the kinetic cycle, it's already too late, right? You're going to transfer the stress in your system to some other joint or tissue, and that's where we get injured or we compensate. So yes, you absolutely see this. I think one of the best examples is in, a lot of the Achilles injuries that you're seeing in the NBA as of late, right? That's just such a hot topic right now,
Yeah.
is that we're seeing these injuries in high level athletes. Of course, it's very multifactorial, and athletes are being pushed faster than they should be to return to play, and there's that whole side. But I think a lot of it has to go back to the nervous system. At the end of the day, that's the foundation of all human movement. And the
Yeah.
optimization of human movement is it is a nervous system story. So what does that mean to people, right? Like how does the coach and the trainer really always look at something from a neurological perspective? That's really where I think the direction has to go.
Yeah, it's definitely about like priming people into better overall natural movement patterns. And so they get like, good reps. And so when they are challenged with something that is going to potentially take them out, that they know how to react to that before it even happens. I talk about how ankle sprains has been proven happen in like 0.08 milliseconds, right? An ankle sprain will just like instantly happen. And there's been some recent research around how the tensioning of the calcaneal fibular ligament that goes over the peroneal ligament that runs underneath it kind of tensions that as there's like a movement between the midfoot and like the forefoot and the calcaneus, as that kind of twists, it creates this
Mm-hmm.
tension that actually runs over the peroneal ligament and signals the peroneals to fire as you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have that tension of like, oh, here I'm going onto the outside. I need to make it so that it doesn't collapse and create an ankle sprain. And so the body has like these defense systems put into it, but we've so gotten away from like being able to engage it because we like fundamentally disengage even the geometry that allows it to happen with the point to toe
Yep.
box.
Yep. Yeah. No, 100%. What I love of what you're saying is I would remind the listeners that our connective tissue, like every part of your connective tissue, ligaments, tendons, fascia, retinaculum, periosteum, there's over 100 million sensory nerves in that connective tissue web. So that is that CFL ligament contacting, signaling sensorily to the peroneals to stabilize the lateral ankle, right?
Yep.
I call this sensory intelligence. Like we need to move sensorily connected or through this sensory intelligence during all of our movements. And remember that at the end of the day is what's communicating, right? And it's
Yeah.
communicating quickly, subconsciously. This is not a conscious thing. This is in the subconscious.
Well, that's a good thing to talk about with like how is your body teaching itself to move in a better way when you're wearing something like this textured sock and you're wearing a minimalist shoe, because like people always talk about like, oh, minimalist shoes are great for your ability to sense the ground. The
Mhm.
best minimalist shoe, the most minimalist shoe that's like super thin is still kind of really masking what's happening underneath the ground. Where if like I went and walked on a bunch of sharp rocks in the most minimal shoe possible, I would have an easy day. I wouldn't feel any of those sharp rocks or points.
Right. Yes. And I often say that, and that's not, a dig on any of the footwear companies. It's just saying like you still have this interface between the skin on the bottom of the foot and the ground. It's a little bit of rubber or a piece of leather or something that is creating a sensory disconnect. That's where using the Naboso insoles or the Naboso socks, which you showed, which has the tiny little pyramids on it, is targeting a very specific nerve on the skin in the bottom of the feet. So when we walk in minimal shoes and no Naboso socks, you are feeling pressure, right? And some vibration is getting transmitted, but there's a lot of different stimuli that comes in through the foot that you need to utilize to tell the story of movement. One of those is 2-point discrimination. It's called the Merkel disc. That's what Naboso stimulates. So it's just saying like we are a very specific stimuli to a certain nerve in your feet. So if you put it in the shoes, we are now just turning up the volume of your feet, or we're turning on your feet a little bit more, right? So how do we get more out of that movement? For an athlete, this is huge. For someone coming off of an injury, this is huge. For someone who has a neurological injury, neuropathy, stroke, MS, huge. Children, it's huge. Literally everyone. We need to be able to be connected. And what I will say, the last thing that I'll say on that is we don't know what we don't know, in the sense that we may feel that we are moving well. We may feel that we are utilizing our feet in our existing footwear. But until you actually experience true, complete sensory stimulation or activation of the foot and things like that, you don't know that you were missing that, right? So
Yeah.
it's really, really important. And I found that and appreciated that when I was looking at research, looking at athletes who would do barefoot training as a way to minimize injuries during the season. So it would be like soccer and football and things like that. And they would do it pre-season, and then they would show a significant decrease in injuries in season in association with this barefoot training or strengthening the foot, right?
Yeah.
Always at the end of the study, it's very fascinating that the athletes that were the subjects post the research study period were like, can I keep doing that? Right? Like they were just like, well, no, now I know what it is, right? That it's,
Yeah.
to me, that's always just so fascinating that we don't know what we don't know until we experience it. And then we're like, oh, that's what connected movement feels like.
Yeah, the veil definitely gets lifted on their eyes, and then they're like, "Oh man, I
Yeah.
really love that. Why can I not do that?" Especially in like every single other shoe that people are trying to like force me into or pay me to wear.
Yeah.
And why am I not getting this from that? It's really kind of insane that we've gotten so far away from that. You mentioned kids, and you're a mom. I'm a dad, and it's so important that we're giving our kids like this natural movement input to build them up and make it so that they have those natural motions and movement patterns. Can you talk about a little bit about like how does that develop in a child, and how could something like just getting them outside barefoot make it so that they can speed up their ability to have like better dynamic balance and a better stable system throughout their life?
Yeah, absolutely. So with children, few things that, everyone wants to think about, parents, coaches of children, is from the moment that we're born, I mean, actually in utero, but the moment that we're born to the age of 4 or through 4 is the peak window of neuroplasticity. So this is where the brain is as open as it could be to just set new synapses. And this is where a lot of the movement, motor patterning is established. This is where we start to establish our relationship with gravity. And it's all really focused around walking, because at the end of the day, that's really the foundation of human movement is bipedalism, right? Stand up, 2 feet, walk. So that's all being really shaped around this newborn to 4 years old. So think about that in a child in that window of shoes, minimal shoes, barefoot, keep the kid as barefoot as you can. In a home, a child should always be barefoot. When you go to the playground, they should take their shoes off. Of course, there's extraneous kind of things that kind of might limit that, but being as barefoot and on as many different textural sensory stimulated surfaces as possible. Okay. Now, in addition to that, when we are born, our foot is almost entirely cartilage. So every baby's going to be born with a flat foot, a pancake foot, right? Then as we start to get a little bit more, you can kind of start to tell around like 2 years old, 2, 3, like I would be able to see and say, okay, this kid actually has a little bit of ligament laxity,
Mhm.
even though I see ligament laxity in a foot in, say, a 2 or 3-year-old. I'm still not doing an orthotic at that point. This is all about sensory exploration and development, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of understanding that we are still developing our foot. Now, a child does not develop a adult arch until the age of 7. So we have to allow the foot to go through this. I know you're very into your spirals. There's a lot of rotations that happen as a child is developing. The first, especially in those first really 12 years, there's a lot of derotation of the hips. So
Yeah.
this is even if a kid is born looking really knock-kneed, right? My daughter was, freaked me out. I was like, oh my God, that's totally from her dad. Sorry. But I was like, oh my God. Right. But she started to derotate, and as she grows in her pelvis, and right. So now it's like everything kind of aligns. So we have to be very open to the changes that are going to occur in this, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and still focus on that motor development, sensory, really trying to keep them in as minimal shoes as possible. Teach them to feel and connect with their body. Do activities like gymnastics, dance, martial arts, things that are barefoot, but also body weight based. I truly believe that every child should do some gymnastics of some sort, just so they're on like beams and bars, and like they can just feel what it feels like to be above the ground, and what does that feel like. So spatial orientation,
Yeah.
perception of self in relation to space and external objects. So that's kind of what I would think about. Now, I do work with a lot of children athletes that are ridiculously talented, and when I start to see them around like 10 years old, that's kind of like that sweet spot,
Hmm.
that's where I may say, okay, let's use an orthotic in the case of like a ligament laxity in the cleat, right? Teach them how to kind of modify the cleat. This is in very specific situations. This is not every child.
Yep.
To say, okay, this 10-year-old who's putting very high load on their system, we need to make sure that they are holding their system in a good foundational position so that the muscles of the hips can be strong enough to derotate the tibia a little bit more and to control that knee, right? So I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of continued skeletal development that has to occur for the child to maintain the level of load in their sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So there is a time and place for orthotics and building it in for children. But definitely do remember that all children are born with flat feet. That does not mean that all children will grow out of flat feet. Every pediatrician says that. That is not true. There are exceptions to every rule. I also have a lot of videos on YouTube where I talk about the pediatric flat foot so parents can understand it.
Yes. Yes. It's really important to realize that, you know, there are podiatrists for a reason, and that they are like actively trying to help your children. You are a great example of that. Dr. Andy Bryan is a great example of that. Rena Harris is a great example of that. These functional podiatrists that are really going
Mhm.
first towards natural movement, and then if everything else is failing, saying like, okay, now modern medicine needs to come in and give some gentle assistance.
Mhm.
Why? I don't want to get you in like super bad trouble with the APMA, the American Podiatrist Medical Association, but why did they go so far in the other direction where they're just like prophylactic mid-foot arresting for everyone is the recommendation? That's what I tell everybody too. That's exactly what I tell everybody too. Yep. Yeah.
You know,
I'm glad that we're on the
it
same page
is,
with that.
yeah. What I do think though is that a lot of parents and patients and individuals are now wanting more, demanding more, challenging a lot of aspects of what they're told from the white jacket, right?
Yep.
And even for what I tell people, I'm like, you can go get another opinion, right? I'm giving you my opinion. At the end of the day, it's an opinion, right? And
Yep.
I know that a lot of patients sometimes get confused of that because like they'll come to me for a surgical second opinion, and they're like, I went to three different surgeons and they all gave me a different procedure that they want to do, and they're like, that makes no sense, why is it not? I'm like, because at the end of the day, these are opinions, right? You're still a human. We're giving you our opinion on what we would do. So definitely vet it out, right? Do your research, ask questions. I'm all about educating, empowering. I want whoever I'm talking to medically to have an insight of my brain. So if they have this presentation, I'm going to go through out loud why I don't think it is this, right? So that they can understand that process. So yeah, so that's with everything. So if we were to go back to like children and feet and recommendations and athletics, is that's where they could start to say, the parent could say, I don't know, like that doesn't sit right. Can't we do this? Or let me find someone else. Let me advocate, because the child obviously doesn't know to advocate. So
Yeah.
that's an important part of it.
Well, one thing that is really close to my heart, and it's probably close to yours, is the health and wellness of female athletes. Because I'm a girl dad and you're a girl mom. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, it's well reported that women are way outpacing men in terms of foot surgeries later in life. But how is it that the foot choices or the footwear choices that parents are making early on, and especially their girls' lives, shaping these non-contact injuries that are happening in sport later in life, or especially like starting around age 13, just like popping off like crazy?
Yeah. So again, I think that those injuries in teenage girls who have the hormone fluctuations that we understand. Um, Hormones have a huge impact on connective tissue integrity, fatigue levels. That's a whole conversation over there, right? But we need to realize that everything sets the foundation through then these increased injury risk of estrogen levels changing through the cycle. The foot still has to be the foundation, right? So if we
Right.
set them up with the strength and the foundation and the skills, super important. Any footwear that we put on our feet are going to modify the shape and the mobility and the connection to our feet. So anything narrow, like a ballet flat. I'm trying to think of like a dress shoe. Yeah, a cleat, an improper cleat. Whatever they're wearing when they're in school. I mean, everyone is just crocked out over here. Like that's
Yeah.
everyone just wears Crocs. It's crazy.
Don't get me
Um,
started on Crocs. Oh my gosh.
oh, I know. They're making a lot of money, but so something like that that is also reinforcing improper walking patterns. So this is
Yeah.
important as well, that a lot of kids or teenagers shuffle. just they just shuffle their feet, which I get is kind of like, I don't know, it's the swag of being a teenager, but it's changing mechanics all the way up in the hip and the pelvis, and you're taking one step backwards to the direction of athletic performance when you are walking like that. So I think it's about education. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
the parents have to be educated to know the effect of these things. The children have to be educated. I love when I work with a high level teenage athlete, even like a 10-year-old, right? Like that tween to teen athlete that is just really talented, right? And you
Hmm.
get them and you're like, do you want to go to college for this? Right? Like,
Yeah.
do you want to go pro? Like, where is their dream, right? Now you have this intrinsic motivation that I will talk to the kid. I will talk to the 10-year-old, not the parent, and
Yeah.
say, I need you to do these things, right? And a kid that is really focused on an athletic, like a sport and athletic performance, they will do it. And I make it easy, I make it achievable. I want them to understand the effect, the long-term down road effect of the decisions they're making now. This is honestly life, right? This is not just a
Yeah, they
foot
don't they
thing.
don't think about that at all, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I want them to do, to know and to take ownership of their body, because I mean, as you know, the schools don't do that. These team sports that it's just not built into it to have the recovery component of, well, you should be releasing your feet. Why don't you wear toe spacers? Why don't you, do X, Y, or Z? And they're
They
so
put on
easy to
Texas
do it.
rock
Use
while
the
you're playing.
Naboso socks, right?
Until
My
Texas
God,
actually
right?
playing, man.
Exactly. Just slide them on, right? That is just, it's so easy to do, and it's not necessarily going to come from the coach, which means
Yeah.
it has to come from the parent.
I mean it's really tough with that dynamic because like you have coaches where they are like locked into old coaches tales is what I call them, and they are reinforcing old patterns that they've been taught decades past that are like really well disproven or very even injurious. I can talk about my own experience in the Marine Corps where they tell you to heel drive when you're marching, right? They're like heel drive,
Mhm.
step it out, heel drive, heel drive, heel drive. And then when they put a 60 to 100-pound combat load on your back, they're like, no running, open up your stride. And I'm just like, okay. And the thing is that like they have women training with us, right? And so like I'm a 6 foot Marine, and then I got like 5'2" to 5'6" female Marines trying to keep up with me. They always put them at the top, at the front of the formation. They start falling back, and they're like, no running. And then they wonder why all of these women, after they're done with officer candidate school, have hip stress fractures. And you're just like, oh my gosh, you are telling them to have hip stress fractures, people, right? And that's a really good example of an old coach's tale in the Marine Corps that's creating problems. It's creating injuries.
Yeah. There is a lot of um, historical skills or drills or whatnot in every sport, every kind of like the military that you were saying, because that's just what's been done for decades, right? I was a gymnast. That was my sport. And gymnastics is notorious for being a historically taught sport. The way that you teach someone to do a drill is through dot, 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 right?
Right.
And then my daughter's coach, like when I coached the way that I learned. I didn't go to coaching school. I learned through the drills and the progression that have been demonstrated generations through, right? And then I see the same thing with my daughter. Thankfully, now there's more and more research and physios and chiros kind of coming in and saying, do you realize that you could do, kettlebells or something like that, kettlebell swings to build endurance in gymnasts, so that the gymnast doesn't have to keep doing like spine flexions over and over, something that is leading to these historical injuries that are seen in certain sports. And they're
Yeah.
like, you don't have to do literally 10,000 back handsprings to become an expert at the back handspring. You can cross train in certain ways to get the endurance and the strength so it's just really interesting that people are coming in. But if you look at like the US Gymnastics Association, the Olympic Committee, like a lot of that's historically, it's just done through what's always been done, right?
Yeah.
So in the military, it's the same thing. And they lead to amazing athletes, but they also lead to a lot of damage to the body.
Broken people too. Yeah. Like the amount
Yeah.
of like just systemic disability that happens not because somebody's blown up by an IED, but because they happen to be in the service is insane, right? The
Yeah.
amount that we're paying for people being disabled, and we're paying for it through the VA. But the same thing's happening for like athletes where like they have knee pain for the rest of their life. And what really
Hmm.
blows my mind is the amount of ACL tears that there are in women's gymnastics, because
Hmm.
that's a barefoot sport. But I could say that like we could do a better job of how we judge, especially dismounts and the things that we're doing in terms of like teaching athletes
Hmm.
things that are actually breaking them because it's
Hmm.
in the judging standards. If that's a
Hmm.
barefoot sport, it shouldn't have this high level of non-contact injuries, but ACLs are getting shredded at an extremely high rate in girls
Yeah.
and women's gymnastics.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I mean, if I knew what I knew now when I was a gymnast, I always joked that I would be a way better gymnast when I was a gymnast. I'm just like, oh, that's my pelvic floor. Like, I didn't know what my pelvic floor was when I was, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like
Yeah,
you're just like, oh, short foot intrinsics. Obviously didn't know that. Um, so yeah, it's needed to have this fresh perspective in athletics and injury prevention slash athletic performance.
yeah. I'm a nerd not just about the field sports, but I look at it from like everywhere because like I just think that it's extremely important that we reset the movement culture for everybody because if there's a deficiency, and especially when it comes to something that's barefoot all the time, people are going to be like,
Hmm.
oh, why is that happening in barefoot athletics? Like you're saying that barefoot's supposed to be best, and I'm just like, well,
Exactly. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
kind of a little bit of a reason why it's happening over there, and it's because of the way they're training people.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This has been awesome. I again love your products. I've been using them ever since you started. So you said 2017. That's when I bought my insoles. So like I am ground floor on this, and I cannot tell people
Yes.
enough about these textured socks and how great they are. with our cleats, and you can use them with toe
Yes.
spacers. They fit with toe spacers. You can use them all together, pow, natural alignment, and then natural motion. It's great.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Of course. Thank you. We'll chat again soon.
All right. See you later.